What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have an album review for you. Now, this was supposed to be John and I, but a couple of factors got in the way. John's work kind of screwed him over in terms of a shift change, and he is absolutely just completely beat because he had to work a double. And I have a cold, and I don't want to give it to him. And it sucks because it's a cold. No one's ever said a cold was great, and I'm not about to be the first one to say it is. But still, through all the congestion and snot, like enough snot for me to make my own booger trolls, I definitely wanted to cover this one because honestly, this was one that I was probably the most excited about. So I'm going to go over the latest offering from Molder, Catastrophic Reconfiguration. This also comes out on the 8th of November on Prosthetic Records. This band formed in 2017 in Illinois. This is either their second full-length or third full-length. It kind of depends on if Vanished Cadavers is counted as an EP or a full-length. I count it as a full-length. That is where I got into this band. I went over their last album, Engrossed in Decay. It was just pure riffy, old-school death metal fun. And I believe on that album, they recorded as a three-piece because this one, at least as far as the archives are concerned, is the first one with their new guitarist, Carlos Santini, which he's been in the band since 2021, but I guess he didn't get a chance to be on Engrossed in Decay. He's also a member of Cryptum, so that might have had something to do with it too, in terms of like, you know, time split between bands. Either way, I was looking forward to go over this one, and honestly, this is just, again, some flat-out, grimy, old-school death metal, very much in the vein of Autopsy. These guys love Autopsy. You can tell in all the punky D-beats and just kind of like crusty riffs that show up, but there's tons of just like old-school death metal tropes across the board. And I will say that the Autopsy comparisons are even further cemented because this time the mix and master was done by Greg Wilkinson of Autopsy, Deathgrave, and God, what, Static Abyss, and probably some other bands I'm missing too. I have become a big fan of this guy's production, and he's literally the perfect guy to produce this band sound. It's raw, it's swampy, big snarling bass. Everything on here sounds like exactly what you get live from this band, and I've had the pleasure of seeing this band a couple of times live, and they absolutely crush. This band's sound is just absolutely filthy and grimy sounding. One of the things I absolutely love about this band are the vocals. The vocals, this is like listening to Autopsy, but imagine either Martin Van Drunen or John Tardy fronting the band, or both, because there's occasionally moments where it's kind of hard to distinguish which one he sounds like. Those ghastly, gurgly vocals and like occasionally some alternating ones to like lower roars too. I love over-the-top death metal vocals in general. It kind of adds a like layer of camp to the whole sound, and I mean, this band is all about just like gross, gnarly, disgusting sounds in general. There's even some additional vocal filters thrown on occasionally, like frothing, where it just kind of like subtly kind of shifts the vocals with this weird filter that kind of sounds like, you know, their vocals are being processed with the sound of like someone boiling innards. This band's sound definitely lurks in like late 80s death metal, like of course Autopsy, but even like a little bit of Morbid Angel, and there's definitely like a heavy thrash influence to their sound, but there's also a lot of like 90s stuff too. This one I would say is maybe a little bit more focused on death metal overall. Like there's definitely thrashy moments and like syncopated riffs on top of like fast thrashy D beats, but most of this really kind of just goes for an overall death metal sound. And a lot of that comes in the riff work. There's definitely a more sinister, kind of dark, grimy sound to this, like busted innards with their descending, I don't know, they might be like hammer-ons or something like that. Again, I'm not a guitarist, but it could be what they're doing, but it's got this kind of just cool descending melody that's like hammer-ons or pull-offs. Very distinctly death metal. Masked in Mold opens up with like some very sinister, clean melodies and then kind of builds in this like just disgusting death metal groove. It sounds decidedly more menacing, and as it builds, it gets more intense, especially when you get down to these like galloping carcass-like grooves on it. It does take more of a turn towards thrash metal on that song, but overall, like this album definitely has more of like that death metal atmosphere. The harmonies feel decidedly more focused on death metal. The lead we're gonna hear might be like a touch thrashy, but it's kind of just like, you know, small pockets of solos. Like it's mostly focused on just delivering these just bludgeoning riffs. That might be like one of the differences from the last one. There's also less samples on here, but that doesn't seem to hinder the atmosphere. In fact, I think they do a good job in terms of like building tension more with just the music rather than, you know, peppering in some samples. There's still a couple on here, but there's decidedly less. There's still a ton of groove on this one too. Corpse Copulation in particular. That main riff and that opening groove, and that turns into the chorus too, absolutely infectious harmonies on there. Couple that with like the double time grooves, the punky D beats, the fun chorus refrain. That song is a giant earworm, and believe me, I believe the main goal of this band is definitely to give you worms. But while there's like a ton of groovy pockets on here, I would say like the pace of this album feels a little bit faster and a little bit more urgent overall. And while this band isn't noted for being like a very blast beat driven band, like it's mostly D beats and like thrashier rhythms and of course like tons of pockets of groove, there's a little bit more in the way of blast beats on here. Frothing, Brain Boil, and Nothing Left to Ooze. Again, these song titles are fucking fun. Those are a little bit more like fast-paced, a lot more blast beats. They do change up, like they don't stay like solidly on the blast throughout the entire song, but they're definitely more prevalent. A lot of the time, this band will use like blast beats as almost like a fill, like an accent. Like all of a sudden in the middle of a groove, you get like a little blast beat section. Kind of similar to Undeath. Undeath does that a lot and it works very effectively. And much like Undeath, it's all about the riff work. The riff work on here is fun as hell. And as I said, it is like meat and potatoes, but it's fun. It's energetic, like it keeps you locked in. The riff changes are clever. And honestly, I think this album is maybe a little bit stronger than Engrossed and Decay as far as the riff work in here. Like there's just a little bit more nuance to them. Like, you know, more harmonies that show up that are just, you know, like a little bit more intricate and more riffs that just stand out for like really cool, clever hooks in general. Now, oddly enough, one of my only complaints, and it's a pretty minor one, actually does center around the riff work, which I've been, you know, praising the living shit out of it for this entire review, at least I think for the entire review. We'll just say most of it. But I will say that when they do get into these like D-beat, you know, chugs, like, you know, the crustier riffs, the stuff that just, you know, absolutely screams autopsy whenever they break into like a punky D-beat, I do think that some of the riffs in there feel a bit interchangeable. Like they just supply like a kind of like bare bones riff behind like, you know, some fun vocal cadences, which, you know, I'm totally okay with. But the fact that when they kind of transition out of them and get down to like a riff that definitely has more character to it, like, you know, bring in like some triplet chugs, or again, like a clever harmony, some weird pull-offs, or just like a clever transition, you kind of forget about that riff that they were singing over. The riffs on the D-beat sections kind of become like, you know, arguably like kind of the most stale riffs on the album. That isn't every song, but a lot of the songs I feel like they kind of recycle like a very similar down-picked riff for like, you know, like D-beat verse sections. And again, I don't necessarily think they sound bad. It's just they kind of sound a little bit exposed. But overall, I really dug this. Like, I liked every track on here. Kind of knew I would. And, you know, going back and listening to the last one in comparison to this, I feel like this is overall just a stronger album. The riffs jump out more. I think the production, Greg Wilkinson was absolutely the right guy to work with this band because this has that grimy, filthy feel to it, and it absolutely works. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. This is a fun, riffy bastard. Every song in here has got like just flat out killer riffs. I love the vocal performance. The production's great. It's just a flat out fun album, and that was kind of my expectations. Like, you know, this band, I'm not expecting them to dazzle me with like a ton of technical play or anything like that. I want them to deliver solid riffs that are memorable and songs that are just catchy and grimy and fun, and that is 100% what this band does. I think in the last review, I kind of compared them to like tongue-in-cheek horror. I still get that vibe, and I absolutely love that. Like, I want to like kind of just like laugh at some of the ridiculous song titles and maybe some of like the extra grimy, just over the top lyrics. This band embraces death metal's camp, but it's not like satire. Like, they're serious about like writing just absolutely killer songs. And yeah, this batch I think is the strongest batch yet. So yeah, if you're a big fan of definitely Autopsy, Obituary, I would say Death Breath too. Definitely a touch of Jungle Rot as well. Just check this album out, and if you like it, just go ahead and get the rest of their stuff because I think it's all awesome. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also now have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and we will eventually be doing a members-only stream because that is the perk that I signed us up for. Not sure when. I need to fucking shake this cold. We also have emojis that are kind of dumb. They might get dumber because I'll add more. This is pretty much the new way to support the channel directly. We want to get away from Patreon eventually. And of course, we still have our store as well, thrallsmetal.com, which is linked down below. T-shirts, hats, all that stuff there. But if you want to help us out and become a member, click the join button down below. And, well, regardless of whether you choose to or not, thank you guys from the bottom of my heart once again for everything you've already given us. We are on the verge of hitting 20,000 subscribers, which is ridiculous and very irresponsible of you guys to keep subscribing to this channel. This is practically enabling. No, seriously though, we absolutely appreciate the hell out of it. It has been an amazing journey, and it is large in part to you guys. So tons of stuff coming up on the channel. I mean, we're eventually going to get down to year-end lists, and I got some ideas for talking points and so on and so forth. So yeah, definitely stay tuned, and I want to thank you one more time because you guys are awesome, and we'll catch you later.